Welcome back to Prepper Talk Radio. We're super excited to be able to talk with you guys today. I've got this Paris Clough. We're back in the studio again with Shane Coles and Scott Stallings, the three of us, the three amigos, the three of us back together again to help you become more ready-minded and prepared in all things that you're going to be involved with, or anything and everything that life can throw at you. Specifically, helping you understand that God, family, and country are a critical part of any prepper's guidebook and just what we should be focused in on. Today we have a special guest. We're really excited because we've been promoting Jase Medical as one of our affiliate links in the description below. And so if you go into the description, you'll find a link to Jase Medical. Jase Medical is a company that has provided antibiotics for those that need to have an extra supply of antibiotics on hand in case anything goes down, when the grid goes down, or basically for any reason you might need to have an extra supply of antibiotics. Jase Medical provides a kit that you can go on to their website and click the link in the description below. If you use the code PrepperTalk, you can get $10 off. And today we actually have the founder, Dr. Rowland, on the show with us today to tell us a little bit more about Jase Medical, what the story, the history, the future, and the excitement about what Jase Medical has to offer and what we're going to be able to bring to you today. So welcome, Dr. Rowland. Thank you so much for being on the show today. We're super excited to have you and listen to what you have to share with us. So
thank you. Thank you for having me here. Really excited to talk. We always love to talk about not just about Jase, but all the things behind it and why this is important and why everyone should know about it.
You want us to call you Dr. Rowland, Doc?
Man, that's
big man on campus.
Yeah,
Shawn. Like, what do you prefer that we?
Big man on campus. That's a new one. Maybe I'll adopt that.
Well, every medical place is a campus as well, right? Like,
right.
So that's why I chose that specifically for you.
It's funny. It always seems to change in the setting. I do. I'm sometimes working on movie sets, and I seem to somehow Dr. Shawn became my moniker there. I'm happy with anything. You guys feel free to call me Shawn. That's fine.
Wait. You just said you working on movie sets?
Every once in a while I get called in to work on a movie set. And so, yeah.
I mean, look at that hair. Look at the hair. He's a movie star.
Not as an actor, behind the scenes.
Yeah. For those of you on YouTube, you'll see why he might be called in as an actor. So That's awesome. That's funny.
Oh, shoot.
That's cool.
You go to movie sets basically to be kind of like the medical representative,
yes.
Kind of answer questions, like consult.
Right.
Very cool.
Okay.
Yep.
And full disclosure, I found Jase before we became an affiliate. That's I
love it.
You guys know me, right? I mean, I always have to be prepared before I need it. I have to have it before I need it, right? Otherwise, I feel inadequately prepared, and especially with a family of 7. I got 5 kids. Antibiotics, I would say, unfortunately, have become kind of a staple in the house at times. And so when I heard this on another podcast, I'm like, I jumped and I ordered myself one just right off the bat. So I'm a believer, and that's one of the reasons why we take on some of these affiliates, right? We don't just promote what we think we can make a few bucks on, right? Because that's not what we're about. We really aren't about any kind of making money. We got to pay the expenses, right? But we believe in these products, and that's why why we do what we do here, right? I mean, that's why we take on certain affiliates, right? So glad to have you on. Very glad to have you on, Shawn.
Thank you. I mean, I think we would echo kind of the same thing. We're, obviously we are a business, but at the end of the day, what drives us at our core is this mission that we're on. And so it's always great to talk to some like-minded people that get it. And I'm looking forward to the discussion.
So with that, let's just get into it. Like, what is the mission of Jase?
Well, so, what is Jase Medical? You guys hit on it when we started, but we're an online telemedicine service. We bring patients, physicians, and pharmacies together specifically for the purpose of providing patients a cache of life-saving medications. We started with antibiotics, and we will grow from there. And the reason behind all of that, I guess, is the interesting part. The story goes back actually to 2018, 2019. I was working in a community hospital along our southern border, working in the inpatient service there. So just regular inpatients in the ICU. And we would have daily meetings with the hospital team. Everyone comes in and we have a little brief to get the day started. And we'd have the hospital pharmacist was always a part of those meetings. So he'd come in and he'd tell us, what things we might be needing to keep track of as far as shortages went. Now, keep in mind, this is 2018. We were living in the land of plenty, right? In 2018, we could get what we wanted when we wanted it. But here I was sitting here listening to the pharmacist routinely tell us, hey guys, this week we're short of this antibiotic or this medication. And these were some of these were things we depended on daily to save people's lives.
Wow.
And so I just remember being really struck at the time. I was like, here I am in this first world country in one of the best health systems in the world. And we're having a hard time getting these basic medications. What's going on? So that led me to just dig in and do some of my own research, and come to find out, and this was shocking to me as a physician who prescribes these medications, on a daily basis inside the hospital, outside the hospital, come to find out that the United States had and currently has virtually no production capacity when it comes to antibiotics and really any generic medication. So blood pressure medication, thyroid medication, diabetes medication, any of the generic meds, which account for over 90% of the medications prescribed in the United States, we don't produce here. So that was just really eye-opening to me. And you dig deeper, we find out that they all come mainly from China, India. There's a few other countries scattered in there, but of all of them, they all get their active ingredients from China. So that was just instantly kind of piqued I'd say my interest, but also made me really concerned. Fast forward a couple of years, where it kind of mid-pandemic, I moved back to Utah, which is where I currently reside and practice. And, talking about just, I guess, prepper roots. I don't know that I would have called myself really a prepper prior to this, I think, but certainly kind of was always tried to be prudent, tried to have at least, basic things on hand, in the past few years. And then of course, during the pandemic, all of that just got accelerated and just brought to the forefront. So here I am, I'm starting a new practice. We're coming into what was going to be the cold, dark winter of that first winter of the pandemic, when, I was also convinced that we were going to see this we had flu, we had COVID, we had all this stuff that was going to come up, and it was going to be rough. So I talked to my wife at the time and I said, hey, we got to up our game when it comes to supplies here. We had food storage, we had some water supplies and things to, ammunition, that kind of stuff. But we didn't have medications. Now, another interesting point to this, as I dug into this and started my own practice, come to find out what the true cost of these medications were. It's just an interesting thing in our health system. We're so disconnected as physicians and healthcare providers. We're really disconnected in a lot of ways from the cost of our services, because we depend on this insurance-based system. So you write a prescription and you just figure your patient will go fill it and deal with the cost with their insurance company. So you really don't know the true cost of a lot of these things. As I started my practice and got relationships with the wholesale producers or providers of these medications, come to find out that they're actually really, really accessible. They're a lot cheaper than you would think. And so that made me realize we could actually get a supply of these things. And so I did that for my private practice. I got quite the supply of medications. And in so doing, realized, hey, what about my family? What about my neighbors? What about my loved ones? Why is it okay for me to have all this stuff and these guys can't access this? I got to figure this out. So for the next
question
year
in prepping, like you just hit the nail on the head. Like everybody's asking, where do I get medications that I need? Where do I get my antibiotics? And all the time I see, oh, you can get fish stuff. Oh, you can get like, but you got to figure out what the calculations are, and you got to do this, and I'm like, man, can you? I'm like, I'd rather just get like, hey, this is for a human, and it's measured for a human, and hey, I'm a human. Let's get human stuff. I don't go down to Mexico for a reason,
or go to your neighbor and you're right. All these just and it kind of it's an interesting thing, because some of this, if we get any pushback on our service. If we get it, it's rare, but it's going to come from someone who says, well, what about antibiotic resistance? And you guys are just, what are you doing? And my pushback is, so you're saying that it's better to let them go to Mexico, better to get it from their neighbors, better to go get fish antibiotics. That's better than actually educating someone in the proper use, when it's needed, how much is needed, what to look out for, give them a resource, whether it's the book, whether it's our actual physician network, so they can write in, have a question. That's antibiotic stewardship, and in providing it so that they have it when they need it, because antibiotics are different from a lot of other medications. When you need them right away. It's not something like, oh, I can wait for them. I can go order what I'm sick, so I'm going to put an order in and I'm going to get it in a day or two. No, you need to take it the moment that you're sick. So having them before you're sick is just, it seems to be just common sense, but there does need to be some education associated with that, and it needs to be done properly and responsibly. And thankfully, we've, again, through the pandemic, telemedicine really, I think, kind of fast forward the acceptance of telemedicine as a viable means to deliver healthcare, and made this kind of a service possible.
Well, I think, Shawn, or Dr. Shawn, that most individuals, and I would like to think that this is the case, that most preppers of the prepper community are educated enough in order to, that I personally would feel comfortable in their responsibility of using antibiotics correctly, right? We're all about educating ourselves, not just getting stuff, right? We need the stuff, we need the supplies, but we need the information, we need the education as well. So this is, I think, also a great way to get that education if you don't already have it. And being a father of 5 and dealing with antibiotics for decades now, I was already pretty well in knowing the issues with resistance, of using antibiotics when they shouldn't be used, right? And so, I think you absolutely hit a nail on the head with your service here.
A couple of years ago, I was looking out, trying to figure out what I could do to get some more antibiotics, and of course, I was in helping my community get prepared and be ready, and I had a ton of questions come at me. Where do we get supplies for our medicines? Where do we get, I have one in particular, one lady said, I'm a diabetic. Where do I get my supplies? I can't put 30 or 60 or 90 days supply of that. Doctors won't allow that. And I was like, so I searched, and I found a fish that I actually bought, I got a fish that was sick. And I realized that fish that was sick needed to have antibiotics. And so I would go buy antibiotics for my sick fish, because I needed to have a stash, because doctors weren't allowing that. So how does, Dr. Shawn, if you can get around that, maybe, how do doctors, what's the mentality right now with doctors? Because it seems like a lot of these folks are going to their doctors asking for maybe these extra supplies of their medicines, but they're just not getting the same response. They're not getting that help. They're not getting these positive experiences where their doctors are saying, yeah, well, go, we understand, we get it. Here's an extra 30, 60, 90-day supply. What makes Jase Medical different that you can do that for your patients and clients and for people?
That's a really good question. And there's a few different things to talk about here. So I'll see if I can break it down and make it make sense. There's the question number one of obviously just what is standard of care when it comes to the expectations of a physician doing what's best in the best interest of the patient. That's first and foremost. That's balanced, or not balanced, but it's also what we also need to take into consideration is the insurance industry. Mm-hmm. And physicians have been kind of conditioned and trained to work under that system. And that system is a 90-day system. Insurance companies rarely, if ever, will authorize or pay for a prescription that's for more than 90 days. So there's kind of the two kind of work together to where now that's just how we've always done it. And so that's just how we're going to keep doing it. But if you stop, and this is something that we had to build a network of physicians who all were on the same page here. Mm-hmm. And it was this kind of, and it was for me too, stop and think, what am I doing? What is in the best interest of this patient? Let's take the insurance out of it. Let's take some of these other what is in the best interest of this patient? And if you ask that question and you're willing to take the time, which is another part of this, that the physicians just don't have the time to sit and really figure this out and do it right, because they're doing these every 10-minute visits so that they can make a living. Take all that out of it and you see that there is a safe way to do this, that you don't need to limit your patient to a blood pressure medication that you only give them every 3 months when they've been taking the same dose for 10 years and you know their health history. Give that guy a year prescription and let him come in and keep checking in with them like you need to, but you don't need to hold the medication as like this, as a way to force them to come back. Number one, with antibiotics specifically, that is kind of a little bit of a paradigm shift. And it's kind of, I've touched on it before, which was realizing that number one, our supply chain is at a high risk. I mean, nowadays we always are asking what's next. What's the next thing? Is it that we're going to be dealing with? Literally, I think any day of the week could be the day that we find out that the supply chain is been significantly disrupted for pharmaceuticals. I have, maybe we can get into it later. I have some other thoughts on that, but why it hasn't happened yet. But realizing all of that, then really the responsible thing as a physician is to not force your guy to go across the border, not force your guy to go ask his neighbor, because they're going to do it one way or the other, especially in this community where you've got people who are passionate, who understand the dangers. And like you said, they're going to go get their fish in it, whatever it is. Then let's do what's best for the patient. And that's all it is. It's just it's a stop and have the time to really think it through. And 9 times out of 10, the physician comes to the same conclusion. Every once in a while, you do have that holdout who feels, again, to the antibiotic stewardship part, they're not comfortable with someone basically treating themselves for something they think they have. And when you combine that with the book, with the telemedicine resource, then it's not like you're just throwing a bunch of pills at them and telling them good luck. You're providing other resources as well.
Let's jump back for a second. You talked about the teleservices. So we get the booklet. It has a lot of answers in the booklet, but if we don't have the answers in the booklet, we can call in and get help.
Right. So the book, I mean, it says right there at the beginning, and I wrote the book specifically to be accessible for non-medical people, for everyday people who when you're really cut off, you can't get a hold of your doc, you send an email to, you can't even send an email to us, maybe the power's down, maybe who knows what, right? Some kind of a basic resource to give you some guidance. And then my suggestion is, and you guys hit on it, especially in this community where people are really passionate about education and really knowing, not just having all these supplies, but knowing how to use them. There's textbooks that are written by guys who are way more expert than I am in a lot of this, and have, that are out there. So get some of those textbooks, get some of those books that are written specifically for some of these prepper scenarios and how to use antibiotics. They've been out for a long time. The missing piece was you just didn't have the medication to actually use what the knowledge that's in those books. So, but yes, to your last point, as far as reaching out, yes, we offer as a part of the service. You can shoot an email to our answers at Jase Medical. It'll get triaged and routed to the right physician, if indeed it is a question for the physician, and get an answer to your question. Now, I'll be the first to say that's not going to be, you're not going to get an answer instantly, but you are going to get an answer in a timely manner. So that's why I say, hey, first go to your doc. Can't get a hold of your doc, email us. Can't email us, look at the book, look at a textbook. If none of those things are available, things have gone pretty bad, and you're just going to have to do the best you can, but at least you've got the tools you need.
Now, I've got you've pretty much answered all the questions that I wanted to ask you, except for, I guess, for this one. Obviously, preppers in general, and using that term kind of as a broad brush, we are mostly interested in herbal remedies, right? We want to use what's natural. We want to use what God gave us, right? What is your take on that? What's your position on that? And just to give you mine briefly is, yes, I prefer to try and avoid taking antibiotics, taking medications. But I find that when I'm taking that course and they're not working quick enough, I do have to turn toward taking that antibiotic in order to keep from getting worse, right? And then the herbs can be more preventative type of a situation. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think I would say we're probably pretty much the same there. I feel like they're not the end all be all, the antibiotics by any means. I think prevention first and foremost is going to be your most effective method. And whether that's prevention from just being more careful when you are out and about, you're handling sharp objects, hiking through, through the bush, that you're cognizant of your surroundings. So you prevent the injury to begin with. Other things where maybe you do get a little scrape and you've got some herbal things that can help stave off an infection. But once there is an actual infection and you've got a bacteria that's taken hold, then at that point, that's where antibiotics come in. And I think it's a tool that is proven. I mean, you can look back a little over 100 years ago, and the top killers across the board in the world were all related to bacterial infections. And they had herbs back then. They had all these other remedies back then. Yet people still were dying routinely of pneumonia, of
Giardia.
Yeah, exactly. Any kind of dysentery type stuff, kidney failure from untreated UTIs and other. That's what killed people. As soon as penicillin came along, and a decade or so after that, we started to see it, and it flipped. And now the top killers are usually cancer related, heart disease, lung cancer, things like that, not bacterial. It's if you look at a list of the invention of the wheel at the top of the things that changed life as we know it, truly antibiotics are right there in that top three. And so, yes, they have their place. And I think not to replace the so-called kind of homemade remedies, but to be used in conjunction with.
Excellent. Thank you.
I'll tell you, the biggest change that I've done in the last year has been making sure that I have everyday vitamin C, everyday vitamin D, zinc, and magnesium. And my colds, like, I have a lot less. There's something to be said. Like, I was so adverse to just any kind of anything else in my mouth other than, sodas and burgers. And now I'm trying to eat healthier, but I'm taking natural supplements every day. And thanks to Paris, and Shane's really good influence on me, they're converting me to being much more responsible health-wise. I'm like, Mr. Like, I prep, and I'm all about prepping, and that's been my whole life. And I didn't know that until I found out it was called prepping. But it's like, my mom always was like, oh, here's an herbal remedy, take this. And I was like, I got so against it because it was like, here's 30 pills. Oh, I just want to go to school. Leave me alone, lady. And I love my mom to death. And now I'm like, you were right. And changing those habits and getting to where, like, I get my body in a better state. Like, I'm losing weight because of it. I'm feeling better. I sleep better. And it's like, but if I get sick with a bacterial situation, and it's like, it's not going to go away without cracking into my Jase case. Like, we're going to see the doctor. If the doctor's still available, like, I need to know that I can do that. So speaking of that, like, what comes in the Jase case? Like, for those that are like, okay, we hear about it, and Jase is Jase, guys, Jase, jasemedical.com. What comes in the Jase case and why?
Great. So the antibiotics that were curated, specifically thought through as, the problem was, okay, I'd love to give everyone as much access to every medication that's out there as I can. You've got some cost things to think about there. You've got the availability. You've got just some of the antibiotic stewardship. So so the question was, what could we come up with a list? And we came up with 5 antibiotics that would cover the most varied amount of infections in a safe way. So these are antibiotics that are, antibiotics aren't without risk. And so trying to find ones that were well tolerated, that were relatively safe, but also had a good coverage, not just for the most common, but also some of the most deadly. So in our kit of 5 antibiotics, the 5 it's amoxicillin clavulanate, which is also known by its branding, which is Augmented. You have azithromycin, the Z-Pack. You've got ciprofloxacin. You have doxycycline, and you have metronidazole. So those 5 antibiotics, and they're in different amounts. You'll see that the doxycycline is by and far probably the most you get. And the reason is, I mentioned that we want to cover the most deadly. So part of, I guess, on that list, at the top of that list, is bioterror. So specifically anthrax, plague, and tularemia. Those are what the government has identified as the most likely agents to be used in a bioterror event. And they are, in some cases, especially their aerolized forms, they're virtually 100% fatal. For example, the government keeps a stockpile of these medications too, and they keep it for the population as well, for events like a bioterror event. They've kept them for years and years. What we don't have is a really good system in place to get them from where they're stored into people's homes in the amount of time that needs to take place. So if you live in an area where let's say there was an anthrax attack, it's aerolized in the air, you've got less than 24 hours to start your prophylactic dosing of doxycycline. If you can imagine a town of whatever it is, 1 million people, 2 million people, all trying to get their doxycycline from the government storehouse, wherever that is. And you can imagine how that would go. And you think back to how the vaccine rollout went. Not going to be pretty. So the doxycycline is the one that you take in that event, and you have to take it for 2 months. You take 2 pills a day for 2 months. It's quite a course of antibiotics. But that's just one, right? That's probably your most serious kind of scenario. Otherwise, you've got kind of the more common everyday things: sinusitis, UTIs, pneumonia, skin infections. There's a whole list in there. Even some sexually transmitted stuff, bacterial vaginosis. The book covers quite a bit. It's not exhaustive. There's stuff that's not in that book that these medications would cover for as well.
Wow.
But it's a lot. It's human bites, dog bites. The list goes on.
That's
That's
awesome.
really cool.
So
So
essentially,
how long would this? Go ahead.
oh, sorry. So essentially, I've got one for myself. I need to order one for each one of my kids. Essentially, I mean, that's, I guess, how the process goes. Is follow your process, have our consultation with the doctor, and then we have it shipped out to us.
Yeah, it's an easy process. We tried to make it kind of balancing, again, safety, getting only the necessary information that we need and not anything else, to make it more streamlined. So the doctors have the information they need, but it's not, they don't have anything they don't need. And so it makes it easier for the patient to go through that process. Right now we're shipping to 12 and older.
Okay.
We are just about ready to start. We're really excited about it, actually, and I haven't said it to anyone, so you guys are getting a little exclusive here, but
Cool.
yeah, we're going to open it up to infants and children as well. The trick here is that now you're getting into weight-based dosing, where I could tell you, hey, for your 2-year-old, you need to take this much, but you don't end up using this for a year. Well, that 2-year-old's situation has changed significantly in that year, and now that dose has changed. So figuring out a way to make that possible for patients to do at home, again, safely and responsibly. So we're excited about that, because it's another big segment of the population that needs, parents need to have tools for their children.
Yeah.
So opening it up to kind of infants, children, basically all ages now, not just 12 and older, is something right around the corner. But yeah, you go through that process. We do. So basically it's intended as enough antibiotics for one person to get through the worst events like those bioterror, as well as any number of those others. Doesn't mean you're going to use them all, and hopefully you never use them. Thankfully, you can store them for quite a while. And maybe we'll answer this question, because it's probably our most common question that we get, is how long are they good for?
Yeah.
So the Department of Defense, as I mentioned, has, the government maintains a stockpile of these medications they have for a long time. They were having to renew the stock routinely, and it was really expensive. And they commissioned a study, and the FDA got involved to figure out really what is the expiration date of these medications. So when they're stored properly, and properly means in a cool, dry place, what they found was that they retained their potency. Now, there was differences across the board here and there, but if you were to average it all out, at a minimum, you're getting almost all of the potency still after 5 years, and most of them were greater than 90% of their potency after even as long as 15 plus years.
Wow.
So that's talking about potency. The other part of this, and we still get the occasional person who maybe has done a little bit of research or done a lot of research, but missed a piece. And so I'll say this too. The other part of this is, do they degrade into toxic substances? Specifically speaking, the tetracycline, which doxycycline's in the same family. Tetracycline, if you let it sit for too long past its expiration date, does break down and would kill you if you took it after it was expired. We specifically chose these 5 that knowing that they don't do that. None of them degrade in that. At worst, you might lose some potency, but none of them are going to become toxic. And that we get that every once in a while. Someone will say doxycycline break, and it doesn't. Doxycycline does not break down into the same components that tetracycline does. And so that's another consideration as far as their expiration date goes. I'm not talking about
question
here,
for
so I
you.
don't know if I answered your question.
Good to know.
I was going
I
to
had a
ask that
question for
question
you.
next, so I'm glad you brought it up. I'm like,
Oh,
how long does it
perfect.
last? Because everyone,
Yeah.
I shared this on TikTok the other day. I was like, guys, because I wanted one of these for a while. We just weren't in a position where we could buy one, and then when we could, I got it. My sister-in-law showed this to me. Oh man, 7-8 months ago. And when I brought it up to Shane, he's like, "Oh yeah, I got mine." And I'm like, "You got this already?" I'm like, "That's awesome." I'm like,
Cool.
so I know, like if 2 of the people that I trust in my preparedness group already have it, I'm like, okay, they've, especially with Shane, it's like he's vetted this. He's already gone through the process. That's just one of the things I love about Shane is like, I'll check something out and I'm like, oh, you know what? I better double check with Shane to see what he's done. So to go into the how long this lasts, like people ask me that all the time. Oh, how long is this going to last? How long is that going to last? What can I do with this? What can I do with that? And to get it, actually hear it from the horse's mouth, like not to call you a horse, but to just use that euphemism, it's fantastic, because let's just put that argument to bed, everybody. Like, let's just listen and pay attention. Do the research to back it up.
I mean, it makes it just one of those, speaking of euphemisms, it's a no-brainer. It's one of the, there's no reason not to have this, whether you're in the group. We have people who aren't real big preppers, but they travel a lot. I can't tell you the number of times, and that's the one that every physician who's ever prescribed antibiotics has had a patient come to them and say, "Hey, I'm going on a trip. Could I get something for my wife? She gets UTIs, or we're going to this place. Could we get something for diarrhea?" And everyone does that, right? No problem. I'll get that for you, even though you don't have that UTI right now. And so that, but just again, it's one of those things. You get it, you can get it and set it and forget it. It can sit there with your food storage and your water storage. It doesn't matter how much food or water you have. If you get an infection, I mean, we're back in the dark ages, and you can't get to a hospital, you can't get to a doctor. No, it doesn't matter how much food you have. I mean, dysentery will kill you in a couple of days. So it's just one of those things. You stick it there and it's stored well, then keep it there for 5+ years. So, it's not great. It's not a great business model when it comes to, it's, hey, we're going to sell it to you once and never again, but that's not what honestly, that's like I said at the beginning, we're here first and foremost to spread the word. We're trying to spread the good word that, hey guys, this is something everyone should have. Buy it once and never have to worry about it again.
What if I get my kit, I have my Jase case here. We got the 5 different antibiotics. You mentioned the one would last for 2 months if I had that disease or had a disease that this particular antibiotic would take care of. What about the other ones? The other ones is usually one treatment. Is it a couple month? Is it a couple months? Could I do more than one treatment with some of these bottles, or what's?
Yeah, great question. The reason it's not included as like explained maybe on our site or in the book is because there's really, it completely depends. A simple UTI can be treated in 3 days. 5 days is like the max. And they've done, back in the day, we used to treat patients for 5 to 7 days. And we've seen now that with three days of treatment, that's sufficient. Whereas you get something like, say like a sinusitis, that should be treated for 7 to 10 days. So it completely depends on what you're treating, where it's really going to change, okay, how many courses of treatment you have. We give you, for example, 1 Z-Pack. So 1 Z-Pack would cover you for pneumonia, but it's also enough to cover you for almost about 2 diarrheal illnesses. So it's hard to say, oh, well, there's this much and it'll cover this many illnesses. It just depends. But there is enough in there. That's why I've tried to sit down and say, okay, could I just say it covers 10 diseases, 20, 2 times each or whatever. And it's a little more nuanced than that. Other than to say there's plenty there to cover more than you would ever have in a year. If you were to get each, pneumonia, a diarrheal illness, a UTI, sinusitis, and a bioterror attack in a year, you'd have enough. Outside of that, you might need to go get some more.
Yeah.
Now, just for everyone's kind of knowledge base on this, like it's $249 to buy the pack, right? In the US.
$259.
$259. Sorry. Yeah. $259.
Yeah.
$249 if you use our promo code, which is Prepper Talk. That's why I was thinking.
There you go. There you go.
But guys, like, so it's $259. Insurance doesn't cover it, or can
insurance doesn't cover it? No, insurance, but you can use if you use an HSA or an FSA, if you have either of those, you can get this covered under those programs. Otherwise, it is a cash out of pocket.
Okay.
But taking a look at it, if you were you don't have to go through jasemedical.com. If you want to go to your physician, make an appointment. I don't know how long nowadays for primary care appointments. You might be waiting 4+ weeks, but okay, you make your appointment, you go to your doctor, you explain to him, hey, I'd like to get some meds for an anthrax attack, a UTI, give them the list. If you're lucky enough to have a really good relationship with a great, compassionate, forward-thinking physician who agrees, okay, I'm going to give you 5 prescriptions in this amount, and then you're going to take those prescriptions, you're going to go shop them at different pharmacies because every pharmacy is going to have different pricing. And you're going to end up, so again, you had to pay out of pocket for the visit. Whatever that physician visit cost, then you're going to go pay retail cost for all the meds. At the end of the day, we've priced this out. And of course it varies. Like I said, it depends on the pharmacy you go to. And so there's quite a difference, but you're looking at all in anywhere from $400 on the low end up to $700 on the high end is what you're going to be paying out of pocket to do all this if you were to try and piece it together on your own. So back to the mission, we wanted to make this as accessible as we could. At the same time, it is a business, and without the money, there's no mission. So trying to find the healthy price point where we could make it affordable, and the business could continue. And so we pass on, a lot of those costs. For example, the physician, if you go through our encounter and you're not appropriate and the physician ends up deciding, no, I'm sorry, you're just not an appropriate candidate. Well, we foot the bill for that. We have to pay that physician either way. So those are just some of the advantages to going through our process.
Wow.
You sit down at your computer, it takes you 10 minutes. If you get through to the end, you pay that fee and you've got your antibiotics in a week or less, versus the other.
Yeah, here's another way that I look at it is when I'm sick and I'm suffering and I say, would I pay $250 to get out of this right now? I said, absolutely, in a heartbeat. If I'm feeling sick, that price is cheap, right? I'll give you $1,000 if I can just end this right now, So absolutely, that's
that's a good way to think of it. I hadn't thought of it that way, but you're right. Especially when you're sick with a bacterial illness, the difference between a viral sinusitis and a bacterial sinusitis is, that's misery, apart from the complications that come from it. So yeah, I hadn't thought that's a great way to frame it.
And I'm right the same with Shane. I'm like, okay, I call my primary care and he's like, yeah, I can see in 2 weeks. I'm like, I'm dying now. It's a man cold. Right. You don't understand.
Yeah.
This is worse than pregnancy. I'm delivering a baby. This is a man cold. Like, yeah. Tomorrow is my last day if we don't take care of this today. And it's like, right. I can wait 2 weeks, or I can go to urgent care, or
which
one of the other options,
even
like
more,
Instacare.
Right?
Here's and that's like $100. And then I got to pay for my prescription, and I'll get that the next, that night or later the day or the following morning. And that's another $50. I'm like $150 right there. And I have, plus travel, plus like whatever else might happen, or I have to take work off, or I got to, so it could easily be $250.
Yeah.
So
yeah. There's a time cost there too. Yep. Absolutely. This actually just happened. I think, your audience just gets it. It's like, hey, you're preaching to the choir, but there's a group of people, maybe it's your loved ones who aren't quite fully on board the way you guys are, but, and you need to kind of help push them over the edge there. But this just happened to me. This was my mother-in-law just the other day. So she had gone for some dental work, and, a week or two go by, it's just really bothering her still. She's having some pain. She calls the dentist. Dentist is on his way out of town, so he throws her on an antibiotic and says, hey, try this out. Let me know if it doesn't work. A few days go by and she's sick. She is really sick. She calls me up, hey, I need you to come take a look at me. So I go to check her out, and she's on the edge there. And I'm thinking, you're not too far from me sending you to the hospital. What's going on? What are you taking? So she tells me, well, I'm sorry, that's the wrong antibiotic. This isn't going to help you. You need to go you need to go get into your dentist yesterday. It's the weekend. There's no chance of doing that. She's most likely got an abscess that needs to be treated, and needs to be treated by a dental professional. So even if she went to the hospital, there's not much they're going to do for her. So here's the antibiotic you need, and give her and actually put her on the amoxicillin clavulanate, that Augmented that's in the kit. She gets on that for, a good 24 hours. She gets through the weekend, is able to get to her dentist who gives her the definitive treatment and says that, man, I'm so glad you got on the right antibiotic. That's the antibiotic you should be on. That's the one I would have put you on. Stay on it and keep, finish that treatment. But when you're talking about, that's stuff that those infections can quickly make their way into your central nervous system. When you've got stuff in your face, you don't mess around. So you just don't, and that's just an everyday case. That's just someone that's not a prepper thing. That's not a, supply chain down or whatever. That's just a crappy weekend with not able to get the care you need. So just, again, it's something that is just, it should be right there next to your Tylenol and ibuprofen, in my opinion.
Dr. Shawn, I got a question for you. Like, for example, in that particular case, let's say I have a Jase case and I had that exact scenario, and I took that. What was the one you said? What was the antibiotic you said?
Augmented is the easiest way to say it. Yeah, Augmented.
So let's say I take the Augmented and it's gone. So I only have 4 now in my case. Can I call you guys up and get that one replaced? Can I just get the one?
Yeah. So
replaced?
ideally you'd use, you take, anytime you start an antibiotic, you should complete the course.
Well, I know, but if I only have 4 bottles, I'm saying I use that whole course, let's say.
So if you took let's say you took a whole course of Augmented. So you took, let's say,
and now I have no more Augmented
pills
left. My Jase case is now void of Augmented and I need it again.
Exactly.
Can I call you up and just get Augmented? Just get the one?
Yes. So yes, you can. There's a limit. We have a yearly limit in, if you were to just have tooth infection after tooth infection, at some point we're going to say no. Or the doctor's going to say no. At the end of the day, really, all of this, what I'm telling you, is always going to be ultimately up to the doctor's discretion. We have guidelines in place. We have some of our own internal policies to kind of help guide the physicians. But at the end of the day, if they're not comfortable, there's nothing we can do about it. It's their license. It's their prescription at the end of the day. But we do have, really just to answer your question, the answer is yes, you would write in, hey, I had to use this medication. We'd get back to you with a way to refill that, pay a nominal fee to cover the cost of it and to get your kit resupplied. Perfect. But there is a limit in a year. If you were to kind of just be treating your friends and family and everyone, you're going to run out and not be able to get refills. But otherwise, you should have plenty.
Well, that's great to know. It's funny because you say amoxicillin, and I'm like, I'm allergic to that. I can't have that. But here's
yeah. I mean,
cool
not
thing,
great,
like
but
you said, you get 5 medications. I kept looking at my pack. I'm all, I've got 5 boxes, but I've only got 4 medications here. Yes. I'm like, oh yeah, it's because I'm allergic to that. So me, the doctor's like, okay, well, you can have 2 Z-Packs. I'm like, cool. That's the thing I use in the last 10 years. The what I've had to use the most, Z-Packs. So I'm like, this is perfect for me.
Thank you for bringing up the allergy thing. And actually, since if you guys don't mind, I'll stand on my soapbox for a minute, since
please,
it's awesome to have this podcast format. Allergies and penicillin. Maybe I'll ask you if you don't mind getting a little personal here. You say you're allergic to penicillin. Tell me about your allergy to penicillin.
Oh, amoxicillin. So I've had penicillin, like it's different. I don't know why it's different, but like with penicillin, I'm fine. With amoxicillin, I get like the worst hives and rash, like quarter size rash, like bumps all over my body. I can't sleep. I can't sit. I'm standing for like 3 to 4 days.
When was the last time that happened to you?
A year and a half ago.
Okay. So great. So talking to you, I'm quickly gathering here that your allergies, it's real. Mm-hmm. It's been recent and the severity of it sounds real. What's more common, and 90% of the people who say they have a penicillin allergy, is that they were a baby and they were given some amoxicillin or penicillin derivative and they had a little rash, and doctor said to mom, hey, your baby's allergic. Just for the rest of their life, they carry around this allergy to penicillin, right? That's so much more common of a scenario. And what's been studied recently is, and they've got some great literature on this, if 10 years has gone by, there are 2 things. Number one, if 10 years have gone by since you've had a reaction to a medication, you're likely not still going to have that same reaction. Now I should give the caveat here. We are not talking about anaphylaxis. Anaphylaxis
Right.
is, we don't play around with anaphylaxis. Anaphylaxis means your throat closes, you can't breathe. You're going to die if you don't get epinephrine and all the rest. Apart from that, rashes, maybe you throw up, whatever the kind of these other more sensitivity kind of reactions, typically after 10 years are going to go away. But most of those as babies were probably not even a reaction. I mean, babies, when they get sick, they get rashes. And so it was kind of this false correlation where a baby was sick, got medication, got a rash. Well, they were going to get the rash anyway. So what I suggest for people who say they're allergic to penicillin, maybe it's as a child or it's been years and years, you can do two things. You can go seek out an allergist and they can do some tests that are definitive, and they can tell you, you know what, you are safe to take those medications. And that's a great thing to know, to not be living with a fake allergy. And that's actually probably the only thing I should say prudently is the best way to go.
This is so funny because I'm that guy. So 12 years ago, maybe 13, I had an allergic reaction to the amoxicillin, and I'm like, that's new. Like, I don't recall ever taking it before, but I had the reaction, like, okay. And so when I had the reaction again, I don't know if it was a year and a half or 2 years ago, but it was basically 2 years ago, year and a half ago, I had the reaction again. And it was, the doctor's like, oh, you probably had it when you were a kid. So it's this situation. And I'm like, okay. Mm-hmm. Well, then I had the reaction and I'm like, oh, I hate my life. And and I'm also now seeing an allergist to try to resolve a bunch of other issues. And so I have my EpiPen all the time because you never know what shenanigans my life will turn into. And so I really love that we've got this time to talk with you, Dr. Shawn, because there are people who are going to relate to this and to each one of us in different ways and to what you're saying. And guys, like it makes sense to just, at the very least, go to the Jase Medical website, jasemedical.com, and like read up on everything. If you're ready to pull the trigger, get some. If you want to go through your regular doctor route, like that's fine. But like, listen to this podcast, like, cause we're getting some really good gold. And I'm like, that makes so much sense. That's what I experienced. This is so great. Like, It's not every time we have a guest on that I feel like I'm the audience for this, even though I'm one of the hosts. But thank you.
Right.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, thank you guys. It's everyone. It's just I can't say it strongly enough. And of course that's our business and I feel passionate about it, but man, you get into the dark and dirty crevices of the pharmaceutical business and our supply chain and China's involvement. It doesn't go anywhere good. It makes for some interesting conversation, but for today, it just means, hey guys, there's stuff you can do to be empowered and prepared. And it doesn't take long, and when you really think about the expense, it's minimal.
Awesome.
Now, Dr. Shawn, you mentioned earlier. You mentioned earlier that you shared that you have some things on the horizon. We're the first to hear about the children getting to have antibiotics. Is there anything else that's coming up down the pipeline that would be exciting?
Maybe milking me for all the good stuff.
Well, I mean, while you're here, while we got you,
chronic care, like anything else coming.
So feel free to say that's classified. We cannot discuss that at this time. Feel free to say that, but I just figured I'd ask.
No, one we get every single day, and we are hard at work and we are close, is the chronic portion. So, every day, hey, thanks so much for these antibiotics. This is a lifesaver for me, peace of mind. What about my blood pressure medication? What about my thyroid? What about my diabetes? And there's a way to do this safely for those people. It doesn't mean everyone's going to be able to get a year's supply of all their meds. But there are a lot of people who will be able to do that. And it's just a matter of, there's some back-end processes for us. There's some formal policies with the physicians, and we've been hard at work for the last few months on it. And we expect it here pretty soon. And you'll definitely hear about it because we'll be making a big deal when it happens. The other part of that is, and I'll just maybe a little teaser. You mentioned diabetics and insulin, and we feel like we've got a solution for those folks. And that one gives me chills because those guys, I mean, it's a daily fear you have to live in when you're taking, a blood pressure medication, you miss a dose or two or four, depending on how bad your blood pressure is, you're going to be okay. There's things you can do. Thyroid, kind of the same, But when it comes to insulin, I mean, you don't have your insulin. We're talking hours of life left. So it's just something that those of us who haven't experienced it or don't have loved ones don't get it. But those that do. And so figuring out something for those people, and that's something that just as a little teaser that we feel we may have figured out. So
yes. Awesome.
And you heard it here first on Prepper Talk Radio.
I'm
That's
so excited.
cool.
That is fantastic. I've got a little nephew. He has to have insulin shots all the time. And that's our biggest fear is if we can't get those.
Yeah. No, it's an emotional topic. I get it. I hear you.
That's awesome. Well, Dr. Shawn, thank you so much for being on with us this hour, and the wisdom and information you shared with us is fantastic. We're super excited to have this opportunity to get to know you and to get to know Jase Medical and to be a part of the affiliate program that you guys have. It's been a great blessing to us, and be able to share this news and information and be a blessing to other people and pay it forward and really give people the hope that they can get the antibiotics they need. And as you just gave us some real nuggets of hope to look forward to some fun things coming down the pipeline. That's so cool. Yeah. And so we're grateful for you to come on, and maybe we'll get to do this again here once all that drops and you got some of the new things that actually load up. We can get back on again and do another one. That'd be a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
But before we let you go, before we end the podcast today, just remember to go to our website at preppertalkradio.com. Any updates, any announcements will be there. You can actually click several links on our website, throughout our website, and just go straight to Jase Medical. There's links in the description below to hit up Jase Medical. Once again, our code to get $10 off is Prepper Talk. So make sure that you use that code to get $10 off. Join our email list, because for sure, when any of these things update or when we get information, we're going to send that out to everybody who's listening. Join our Facebook group so that you can get involved get involved in the conversations that are there. We're going to definitely be promoting things as they come out. And as we learn things, we're going to be sharing that. You'll be the next, after we know, you'll be the next to know. So the more connected you can be with us, the better and faster you'll know the things that we know. So we really appreciate you guys listening. We appreciate you taking the time with us. We hope that you get prepared, stay prepared, and that you be prepared, and that you're always ready-minded. Thanks again, guys, for being on the show, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, Dr. Rowland. Appreciate it.
Really appreciate it. Thank you.